Hello there, and welcome to this video where we'll be talking about the basic structure of full stack development and what you should know in order for you to be a fully full stack developer. So the first thing I want to draw is the front end here. You have to know about front end, and let me change the color of this diagram here. So I like to use blue, so I'll be using blue. And this front end here, we can use any of the frameworks that are available right now. For me, I use Angular and React. So let's add here. We need to have to know React and Angular, or Angular, that is. It's not a must you know every framework, that is. You should choose one and then stick with it. And this one here is Angular, is not Angular JS. So the other thing that you need to have is API, and the API, I'll draw it here. And API here will help you to interact with your database. So in here, I want to add an API. This is API. And for API here, you can use something like .NET. That is the first one. You can use Node.js. For me, I use Node.js. And also you can use the frameworks like Django here. And for Node.js here, you can say Express as the framework. So the other thing, there are many here and you can use them, you can explore. There are also things like Spring Boot for the Java. So the other thing that you need to know is database. So for a database here, you have two types of database: relational databases and non-relational databases. So relational databases include things like MySQL, database that uses tables. So here we can say something like SQL, MySQL, or MySQL, something of the sort. With this PostgreSQL here. And also, let me first of all push this here and this one here so that we create some space. So you need to know maybe one of these relational databases. And also, let me drag this here. So you need to know about these databases. You can just use other non-relational databases. So non-relational databases is a database like MongoDB. This one here, you can use it. And also there are things like Firebase. But for me, Firebase is a full stack, or it's a backend that is not a database per se, because you don't have to write API for the Firebase. You actually write a front end and then you can connect with Firebase. You don't need to have this API here. So the other thing that is overlooked by most of developers, and it is very important, is something that we call background services. And here you can have this diagram here, and let us call it background services here. So you need to have these background services here, just like this one here. So what is background services? So background services is just an API, a small API or a small backend. So this one is API here. And what is the main function of these background services here? So first of all, then we'll see how the interaction will be, and then I will explain more about background services, because this is where my emphasis is. So what should interact with the front end here is our back end here. So we draw this arrow here, and also our API here will interact with our database just here. So what will happen is that the front end will ask API to fetch some data, or to delete, or to update, or to do CRUD operations from the database. And also there will be another arrows that are coming from the database and then from the API here. Though this is a two-way data, or this is a two-way form of communication, because front end will request data, or will request something from the database, and then API will fulfill the request. So what about the background services? And background services here, it only actually work only with the database here, and it doesn't it doesn't interact with our backend here, and also it doesn't interact with our front end here. So what happens is that when you want to do things like scheduling tasks, like let's say when you want to send emails to users, you need to use these background services here. It shouldn't be in this API here. And this is how it operates. Let's say you want to send an email when a user is sign up to your application. What you need to do is that these background services should run after every 1 minute, and then check if there is a new user that have been added to the database, and then it will select the email for that user and then send that email. So it is not as instant as you can see in most applications, like you see you sign up and then email just appears from nowhere. It is just background services that run in the background and that check if the database has a new user. Or what you can do, if you're using something like relational databases, you can have a column that has a value like, or a column that has values like 1 and 0. So when you have a user that has a value of 0, then it means that user is new and no email that has been sent to them. So these background services, you set it to look for those that has a value of 0 and then send that email to them. So after that, these background services will update that user to have a column or to have an entry in the register column of 1, meaning that the email have been sent and these users are no longer new to this application. So that's the main, or that is the function of background services. Another function for background services is that you may need to send reports. So for example, let's say if you want to, maybe you have a patient or you have a hospital management system and you want the report to be compiled every day at 6 in the evening. So what you do, you can use these background services and you will help it, or you will just program it to run once in a day at 6 in the evening, so that it will go to the database and check if there is patients that have been admitted that day, compile that information or that report in CSV, and then it will send to the email that is specified automatically. This email can be for the director of the hospital or the management of the hospital, so that they don't have to go and check to the reception which patient have been admitted that day, or something of the sort. So you can do complicated things using background services. And you may ask how you do this. And in my hospital management project in this YouTube channel, you'll see I have already indicated that. So that's the main typical working of full stack application. So what you can do in the Node.js, because I use Node.js, there's a package that is called cron, and the cron will help you to schedule tasks in background services. I don't know for .NET, and I don't know for other frameworks of other backend frameworks, but for Node you can look for cron backend, that is cron package, that is. So here I will just type cron. So just go and look for this one, and you can use a website here that is called Crontab to help you practice on how to schedule tasks. So here, just open this here, and you can see, you can come here and start practicing on how to schedule tasks. So these are the things that you should know, and you should be very, very keen on these background services, because you find most courses even don't teach about these background services. In the future, you can keep an eye on my projects, and you'll see every project that I do that is full stack will come with these background services, and I just show you how to use these background services. So because you can use you can do complicated things using background services. So your application, if you are doing a full stack application, it should have a folder for the front end here. So this one, I can't recommend any framework here. Any of this is great. So, but the most popular one here is React. So, and Angular, that is also, it is popular. So here I just want to write, let's add here as front end. Let me type here front end, and so here is the front end, just like that. And here is the front end, and your front end here, this one now will be able to, or will be the one that the user interact with. So you have API that will aid you or help you to query data from the database, and also to send requests to the front end, that is. So the other thing is our background services here, and we have said that background services is just a small API or backend that only interact with our that only work with our database and interact with our database. And again, so this one, background services, is when you want to do things like email, sending email, and maybe generating report for that application. So I think that's great. Now I know that now you understand how the structure for the full stack application work, and I'm hoping that from right now you'll be looking deeply on them, and how you can work with background services. So let me end the tutorial here. We see you in the next video.